Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me and Ericsson here this morning. It's time for everyone in Europe to get broadband, and we in Europe, we got a very good start with 3G mobile broadband. Already in 2007, we saw service introductions in, for instance, Austria, Portugal, and Sweden at price levels unheard of in the rest of the world. For less than 20 euros, we could get broadband speeds in the range of 1 megabit per second. However, in 4G mobile broadband, it appears that Europe has fallen behind. While US, Korea and Japan have, at the end of the second quarter this year, taken the far majority of the 28 million 4G mobile broadband subscribers in the world, Europe can count only one of these 28 millions. Korea, they already now has 99% population coverage of 4G mobile broadband, 99%. And the target is to have a penetration of 90% in 4G mobile broadband in 2014. That's just 2 years from now. And one can wonder what this will mean to the competitiveness of the Koreans. So how could this happen? Excuse me. Well, the early availability of sub 1 gigahertz spectrum and also a well-built-out fiber infrastructure have certainly helped these countries to take an early lead in 4G. The following are some key facts supporting this view. Firstly, already in June 2009, US had its 700 MHz spectrum available to Verizon, AT&T and others. Korea, they reformed its 850 MHz spectrum for its introduction of 4G mobile broadband. Universal access in Europe would certainly have been very much helped by an earlier availability of the 900 MHz reformed spectrum and the new 800 MHz spectrum that we use here in Europe. Secondly, spectrum in the sub 1 gigahertz spectrum band is 3 to 4 times as efficient as the spectrum we usually, or the traditional 3G band in Europe in the 2.1 gigahertz. So broadband access or universal access to broadband would certainly have been helped by an earlier access to the 900 MHz spectrum and the 800 MHz spectrum. In Germany, just 18 months after the availability of the 800 MHz spectrum, we saw reports that 11 of the 13 Bundesländer with previously underserved areas no longer have those. Furthermore, the Swedish regulator PTS, they report that in Sweden there are currently So in Sweden there are 500 places with no broadband at least 1 megabit per second speed, and those places could be individual homes or small villages. 500 places alone. And Sweden is, I can assure you, a very little populated country in some places. And all these 500 places will have broadband access with the support of the 800 MHz band, and also some of the revenues from the 800 MHz auction. So the regulation have built a possibility to also cover the build out of roads and sites, etc., for these 500 sites. And thirdly and finally, 4G mobile broadband will bring 10 times the speed of 3G mobile broadband. And this results in a backhaul requirements of 100 megabit per second or more, which then will require fiber or microwave backhaul. In very remote areas, IP-based, satellite-based backhaul could play also an important role and could be considered for temporary or permanent solutions for backhaul, even though in Europe so far we have mostly seen a combination of fiber and microwave to address those needs. Now, some of you may say, and we heard you, James, express that yesterday very clearly, that I would be glad if I could have any coverage of mobile at all where I live. So then, of course, 10 megabit per second mobile broadband just sounds completely unrealistic. And to be honest, wireless coverage can be difficult and challenging to achieve also in the middle of cities. We all know that too. But we also know that there are remedies, and we have very good examples from Germany, Sweden and others that this can be achieved. So, ladies and gentlemen, with the soon availability of sub 1 gigahertz spectrum across the whole of Europe, backhaul appears to remain as the key hurdle to address the universal access to broadband in Europe. And I have two suggestions. To simplify the procedures for licensing of microwavelength hops, and also a deployment model for the licensees to serve the underserved areas. For example, similar to the regulations in the 800 megahertz band in Germany that proved to have been very successful, are two key areas where I think governments can play an important role to address the need for broadband for everyone in Europe. Thank you very much.